Former MVP Christian Yelich is officially out for the season with back surgery, while MLB wants to make starting pitchers go deeper into games. Let's talk about it. This is First Pitch. Yes, welcome on into First Pitch, covering the biggest stories from Major League Baseball each and every day. I'm Lindsay Crosby of Athlon Sports. He's Christian Rauh, managing editor of InsideTheCardinals.com. And Christian, small slate of games yesterday. We're going to touch on some of the bigger outcomes from yesterday. But I think the biggest news that came out of Major League Baseball yesterday was former MVP Christian Yelich of the Milwaukee Brewers. He's been out since, I think it's mid-July with a back issue. He officially came out and said that he is, in fact, going to have back surgery and will miss the rest of the year. It was July 23rd was the last game he played. When he left, he was leading the National League in both batting average at 315 and on base at 406. Not Shohei Ohtani, Christian Yelich. How big of a blow is losing Christian Yelich to the World Series hopes of the Milwaukee Brewers?
Yeah, it's a good point if you brought up World Series hopes, because I don't think it's going to impact their playoff hopes really at all. I think we can almost say the NL Central is covered, but we'll see. But how does it impact the World Series? I think it impacts it a lot. And first of all, we should probably say, are you surprised that we're in mid-August and we're talking about them still having a chance for the Milwaukee Brewers being a World Series contender after the offseason they had last year, trading Corbin Burns, the injury to Devin Williams, the season-ending injury to Brandon Woodruff? Like, they still figured it out. One of those things they did not address at the trade deadline, however, they actually did the complete opposite, and they traded away some of their outfield depth, was go for an outfielder. So I think they were hopeful that Christian Yelich was going to return, and they were counting on him going to be back in the lineup, or they just felt content with what they had. However, I do think it's going to be an issue moving forward. Obviously, missing that bat is a huge thing. I don't think his defense is something that you're going to miss, but his bat is the absolute huge thing. And I'm nervous to say, this makes them not World Series contenders, because at the beginning of the season, Lindsay, I said this team, there's no way this team's making the playoffs. So far they've done everything that we've said they can't do. So maybe this is not going to be an issue for them at all.
Yeah. Losing Yelich, I think, is harder or worse in October than it is now. And to your point, 9-game lead right now over both the Cincinnati Reds and your St. Louis Cardinals. That is the largest division lead in all of baseball. Philly's got 7 games over Atlanta in the East. The Orioles and Yankees, who are still tied, have 8 games over the Red Sox. So it is the largest division lead in baseball. And it's a division lead over 2 teams I don't feel like are going to make a push for the postseason. Milwaukee in the regular season, I feel like they're going to be fine. They're 69-52, very nice record. They're 7-3 in their last 10 games. And again, they just split the series with LA. But my whole concern is you can replace Christian Yelich's production on the field for the most part, right? He wasn't providing a ton of power, right? The batting average was great. The on base was great. But in the last 30 days, Jackson Chourio is batting .365 with a .604 slug. He's hit 6 home runs and has an exactly 1 OPS, exactly on the nose. Their catchers, the 3 catchers, William Contreras, who's been a stud all year, Gary Sanchez, and Eric Haas, those 3 guys combined have hit 8 home runs in the last 30 days, and they all have OPSs in the 900s. So, offensively, Willy Adames is still Willy Adames. He's got 6 home runs in the last 30 days. So does Rhys Hoskins. They both have, believe it or not, identical 848 OPSs in the last 30 days.
Nice.
Offensively, I feel like they can get by without Christian Yelich. I think you maybe miss some of his veteran leadership in the clubhouse, although Rhys Hoskins can help with that. Here's my biggest issue is I just don't think you have the pitching to make a World Series run. Between the end of the Dodgers series and the announced lineup for this weekend against Cincinnati or against Cleveland, we'll get to that later. Here are your 5 pitchers: Frankie Montas, Tobias Myers, Aaron Savali, Freddie Peralta, Colin Ray. Nobody is scared of those 5 guys in a postseason matchup. Now, can they get hot? Yes. You just need 2 or 3 hot pitchers to get you through a postseason series. But nobody is scared of those guys, right? It's not like you face the Dodgers and you could face Jack Flaherty and Tyler Glasnow in the first 2 games. It's not like you face Philly and you're going to face Zach Wheeler and Aaron Nola. Or even right now, Atlanta, you're going to face Chris Sale, Max Fried, Ronaldo Lopez, Spencer Schwellenbach. Like, it's not even that. I'm not scared of that pitching at all. And so I think, I'll agree with you. I think the division's done. I think they have won that division. It is not dramatic at all. The run differential is good. They have a plus 101 run differential, which is 1 run behind the Dodgers for best in the National League. And then I believe it's the 3rd best in baseball because the Yankees are at plus 118. So the offense can score runs. I'm just not scared of that pitching staff. And so because of that, they'll make the postseason again. I don't know how far they'll go. I don't expect a World Series out of this.
Yeah, I mean, the pitching staff is a question mark when you look at the names that are being out there for sure, but for some reason they're getting it done. You talked about Tobias Myers. I mean, this guy has a whip
281 ERA.
and a whip just over 1.1. I mean, he's finding a way to win baseball games, and he still might be giving up I think he gave up 4 runs in his last outing against the Dodgers, but that's the Dodgers. He only gave up 4 runs against the Dodgers, and with that offense that can score runs, as you mentioned, that's enough to keep you in the baseball games.
Well, flip side here, it's just the Dodgers. But in the postseason, that's who you're going to have to play, right? You're not going to get the easy matchups against Miami and against Colorado. You're going to face the Dodgers in the postseason.
There's a difference between regular season Dodgers and regular season Brewers, I feel. Right now that the Brewers are only surprisingly 1.5 games behind the best record in the National League as we're sitting in the middle of August. Like, never would have saw that happening. But when we get to the postseason, when you have the Dodgers, you have the Phillies, you have some of these other teams that have had recent playoff success, which I do think means something when we get to that point in the season. This might be where we see that fall off from Milwaukee. But maybe not, because as we said before, we've been fooled all season by this team.
We absolutely have. Okay, so going from a team that is, we feel like, a lock for the postseason to a team that is probably not going to make the postseason as it currently stands. Seattle Mariners in the American League West just get swept by the Tigers. And it's got to be a frustrating sweep too, because game 1 was rough. George Kirby, 11 runs, 6 earned in 3 2/3 innings off of 12 hits. They get shelled, right?
Yep.
But after that, Brian Wu gives you 7 scoreless innings. They lose 3-2. Not to be outdone, Bryce Miller gives you 7 scoreless innings. Neither guy walks anybody, and you lose 2-1. Do the Seattle Mariners have the offense to keep up in this division, or is not only the AL West already going to go to the Astros barring a historic collapse, but they're probably not going to make the wild card either?
Yeah, I think that we're only going to see one team out of the AL West. I don't think we're going to see a wild card team out of them. Unless Seattle really steps up here, because that offense has been in trouble ever since Julio's injury, at like the beginning of his injury, maybe a week before. There's been some issues. Now there's been some few shining moments, like Cal Raleigh's been having a heck of a season. He's been having a fantastic year. But you got to love what Wu and Miller did. This young pitching core right now, you don't want to say that, Dipoto is ruining their core, because he actually went out and made some trades. He went and got Randy Arozarena. He did the things you'd want him to do at the trade deadline. Mm-hmm. And you got to say, you got to be happy with that trade deadline. They did some good things, but it's just not working right now. And that offense is as you mentioned, it's just not working. They're 4-6 in their last 10. John Morosi put out a really cool stat on Twitter after the game last night. He said the Mariners lost for the 8th time this season when allowing 5 or hits or fewer. And then on 2 of those occasions, which Thursday was one of those occasions, Seattle lost despite only having 3 hits against them. And one of them was a Javi Baez home run against Anthony Munez, who hasn't allowed a hit since July 4th, Lindsay. So, I mean, things were just falling apart at the end. So,
Right.
I don't know who you can point fingers at as the offense. Is it Scott Service with his decisions, his managerial decisions? I don't know if you can really point the finger and saying, hey, it was a bad idea to put Anthony Munez out there, a guy who hasn't allowed a hit in over 2 months. But I think there's a lot of people who are going to try and make that case that Scott Service isn't doing the right things. But I think really when it comes down to it, they just got to hit the ball. They just got to get on base. They just got to score some runs because the pitching staff is doing it, with the exception of what happened in that first game.
Yeah. Pulling up some of the 30-day stats, like there's some good performances. Jorge Polanco has an 886 OPS in the last 30 days. Cal Raleigh, 798. He's got 6 home runs. He's also only batting 205. And I think that's kind of emblematic of what you're talking about you got to put the bat on the ball. Luke Raley, 4 homers, 746 OPS. He's batting 185. Mitch Haniger's batting 203 in the last 30 days. Like it's this team just strikes out way too much. They've led baseball in strikeouts almost every single season. Honestly, getting Julio Rodriguez back is not going to fix that. Keeping Victor Robles is not going to fix that. Those are guys that strike out a lot. Justin Turner, you feel like is a guy that's not going to strike out a ton and can help a little bit, but there's only so much a 38-year-old first baseman can do. It's a tough place to be, and I'm not going to dunk on this front office for that 54% comment because we know what they were saying. They were saying we don't have to sell out to win the division to make the postseason. Historically, if you can win an above average number of games, you can more often than not get a wild card spot and make the postseason. And then from there, literally anything can happen. So not going to dunk on them for that, but it feels like this team has done such a great job of drafting quality pitching prospects and getting them to the majors and having, honestly, one of the most impressive young rotations in all of baseball. And they have not had nearly the same amount of success on the position player side, finding hitters to support those pitchers. And it's ultimately, I think, going to be the downfall of the 2024 version of the Mariners, just the fact that they can't score runs. And that's frustrating because this pitching staff, I think you said it, this pitching staff deserves better.
In the case of not saying Alanis Morissette quotes once or twice in a week, because I think I already brought her up already this week, you make jokes about that 54% thing. But if you look at the Houston Astros, their winning percentage right now, who are leading the AL West, they have a 542 win percentage. So, I mean, it's right there.
He wasn't wrong.
Spot on.
He wasn't wrong. It's just the way he said it. Like, the concept was right. It's just the way he said it. It made it easy to dunk on him, right?
Yep. Yeah.
Talking about a pitching staff and deserving better. Interesting article came out from ESPN. It was a talk of baseball yesterday. Jesse Rogers wrote about Major League Baseball has discussed different ways to increase the action in the game, reduce the prevalence of pitching injuries, and return, quote, the prominence of the starting pitcher. And one of the things we've talked about the size of the pitching staff. We've talked about the double hook DH before. Like, that's all been things that have been considered. But something that they are discussing, and it's in the preliminary stages, requiring starting pitchers to go 6 innings. Have a starting pitcher leave early if they throw 100 pitches already. You could have a starting pitcher leave early if they give up 4 more earned runs. You could have a starting pitcher leave early if they get injured. There was discussion you would require them to go on the injured list, so you can't manipulate this and just say the guy was hurt to pull him in the first if he's blowing up and then let him make his next start, right? You'd have to put him on the IL. But outside of that, pitchers would have a mandate to make it through 6 innings. And the idea here is it's to incentivize guys to not go max effort for every single pitch, to pace themselves a little bit more, to build up pitch counts in the minors, and to get back to some of the old school idea of the starting pitcher where you're going to throw 6 innings. If it takes 110 pitches, if it requires taking a little bit less off your fastball, you're going to do it. Is this a good idea? Is this a terrible idea? Or is this still kind of half baked and there's ways to do this with some more work?
Half baked seems like, I think, the best way to say this, because I think that there's some good and some bad when you become of
Right.
this. I think getting the starting pitching back to having more length, I think that's overall better for the game. At least in my mind, I think you want to see more starting pitching do bigger things. And also, I think that if you have some pitchers out here going through, like, almost guarantee going through the third time through the order, it's going to make the offense pop a little bit, which has been a problem. As
It's going to add
crazy as it's
offense. Yeah.
been with all the home runs we've seen lately and all the hits we talk about with Aaron Judge doing what he's doing, overall the offense has not been great. So I think for the sake of that, and I think that's really the primary reason is to improve the offense a little bit. I think it's a good idea. The stipulations of why to get the players out, I think maybe those need a little bit of adjusting. I don't really have what the right ideas are at the moment, but especially the injured portion. Like, if you're going to require them to go on the injured list, there are a few reasons where you might just have to miss your one start. Like, if you're starting to get a blister on your finger, that doesn't
Mhm.
always require an injured list stint, but that's not manipulation. Like, the guy's got a dang blister. Like, yeah, they're weird, but it's one of those things that you get pulled for, that we probably laugh at in social media later, but uh that's not something that requires you to be sitting out for 15 days before you make your next start. So I think overall right now, before we start really diving into this and getting
Mhm.
into more of the rule changes, I think I overall like it. It's going to change some things. I think the Tampa Bay Rays are going to hate it because you can't have your bullpen games anymore.
Your
But
openers. Yeah.
your openers. But overall, I think this might be better for the game.
I like the concept of finding ways to get starting pitchers to go deeper into games, right? I like the idea. My issue here is I don't think this is something you can legislate. I don't think you can say, especially with the size of those carve outs. And I tried yesterday to get into baseball reference and figure out how many starts would have fallen under one of those criteria. And a little bit tricky, didn't quite have a ton of success. But I feel like there's not many situations where a guy's getting pulled after 5 1/3 innings where he's allowed 2 or 3 earned runs and he's at 90 pitches. I feel like that's not really happening. Either they've already hit 100 pitches, they've already given up the 4 runs, or like I feel like one of those things has happened. And I think that there's better ways to do this. The double hook DH, I think, is a more interesting and immediate in game impact where you get to keep your designated hitter, provided your starting pitcher makes it a certain length in the game. And they've tested 5 innings, they've tested 6 innings. If you pull your starting pitcher out early, that's fine. Your DH has to leave as well, which means you have to pinch hit for whatever reliever goes in after that. You have to actually use that bench a bit. So, kind of back to the old National League style of play. It's just here's the thing, and there's a anonymous assistant GM quoted in the article. The genie's out of the bottle when it comes to max velocity. I'm not sure it can go back in. And I kind of agree with that. I think all that's going to happen
Point.
is teams are going to ask pitchers to still go max effort to just do it for longer. And I do think in the end that's going to end up leading to more injuries because it's a situation where we've learned the best way to get guys out is to throw as hard as you can, as much as you can until you just can't do it anymore. Like that's the way baseball works now. You go max effort as long as you can until they come take the ball out of your hands.
I think it's a
And
ripple effect. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say,
Uh,
and requiring them to go 6 innings just means if they're at 5 1/3 and they're fatigued at 87 pitches, they're just going to
yeah.
sit there and keep trying to go as hard as they can until they get to that 6 or that 100 pitches.
Yeah, and I think there's a ripple effect as well because in the article it mentions that last season 5.25 innings is the average that they have, and they're trying to get to 6. But in AAA, the average for a starting pitcher is only 4 1/3 innings. So
Yeah.
if you're building up some of your younger players to come make some starts, maybe it's a spot start, maybe you get a call up, you're going to have to build them up a lot more. So that means that you're not only taking away some jobs in the major league from maybe a few relievers. We already took away specialist relievers, and now you might be
Yeah.
taking
Lukey's.
another. You might be taking others. Maybe long relievers don't need to have a spot anymore, right? You just need to have high leverage guys because you only have to worry about the 6th, 7th, and 8th and 9th innings, and then you also have to worry about building up your starters in the minor leagues even more, which might take away another pitching spot in the minors. So,
Or might lead to more injuries with these guys in the minors. I mean, we don't know.
100%.
There's a lot to
Which you
figure out
might
here.
yeah, a lot to figure out here, but I think overall, I think it could be interesting for the game, and I think it'll definitely improve offense.
Yeah. It's obviously it's still kind of half baked. They're still working on this, but it's interesting to kind of hear what the league is prioritizing and trying to work on, right? Okay, quick pitch. We got a lot of stuff to get to in quick pitch. We're gonna try to go rapid fire on this. Minor league, the Tigers are calling up 2 infield prospects at once. Jace Young, former first rounder, is going to be playing third base. Trey Sweeney, former first rounder they got from the Dodgers in the Jack Flaherty deal, listed as a second baseman and the shortstop. Obviously, they have Colt Keith at second base. Young is going to play third. Is Trey Sweeney coming to take over for what we considered the other day to be the worst contract in baseball, Javi Baez?
I think that fans are going to absolutely hope that's the case, but I don't think that he's getting DFA'd or anything. I think that the contract's huge, too big. I think that Sweeney or Young are going to come in and take over those roles. But I think now you're going to be in a position, Tigers fans, where you are paying a terrible contract for a guy that's going to be sitting on the bench. I think we're going to see maybe DFAs or release waivers by a guy like maybe Gio or Shella or something like that. But yeah, you got 2 first-round picks coming up. 2021 first rounder for the Yankees was Sweeney, and then Young was the 2022 first rounder for the Tigers. Sweeney 795 OPS so far in the minors, and Young 841 OPS, 15 home runs, 63 RBIs. So I'm really excited to see Jace Young, especially because he's on my fantasy team. So I got to be excited to bring him up in dynasty.
They're building a young core here, Riley Green, Parker Meadows in the outfield, and then you got Keith, Sweeney, Young. This could be a really interesting team. Catcher Dylan Dingler is up just as of I think earlier this week. Interesting young core of offensive talent here in Detroit. The Phillies have a cycle, and it's from Weston Wilson. If you had to give me a list of Phillies players in order that you thought would hit for a cycle, how far down would Weston Wilson have been?
Yeah, out of a 9-spot bingo card, he's not even the free spot. So no, there's no way that I'm seeing him make that cycle. But hey, he's the 10th guy in the history of the Phillies to do it. So that's what makes baseball fun. Look, he did it quite early too. He was ahead of the curve, and it took him just a double in the 8th inning to get it. And it was a questionable double, Lindsay. If they were on the road, if the Phillies were on the road and he hit that ball, would it have been an error or wouldn't have been a double? Regardless, congratulations to Wilson on the cycle, 10th Philly in history to do so.
Yeah, we'll have Troy from Inside the Phillies on a little bit later for the happy hour episode, talking more about the Phillies, where they stand right now. The spring breakout is back. The prospect matchups between different organizations. Real quick, what is your most anticipated prospect matchup of 2025?
I'm torn between 2, so hopefully these aren't yours. But
Okay,
number 1 overall pick, Travis Bazzana for the Guardians against Cole Emerson of the Seattle Mariners. Big
that's a
Cole
good one.
Emerson fan. Really excited to see him in Everett
Same.
this year. And then I got to go with my Cardinals. I want to see what JJ Weatherholt's got against the Marlins with that brand new prospect pickups they've had at the trade deadline, and of course
That's a good
their
one.
MLB pipeline's new number 1 for the Marlins, Thomas White. So I'm excited for those 2 to start it off.
My 2 are going to be Yankees versus Orioles. I'm just a big fan of both those farm systems. I think the Yankees have done a great job of getting pitching prospects. I think the Orioles have a ton of amazing hitters. So Yankees versus Orioles, interested there. But Cubs at Dodgers. It's the very first. It's the only. I think it's the only game on the 13th, or it's the only National League game on the 13th to start the whole thing. You get some of these amazing Cubs prospects, one of the best systems in baseball, against the Dodgers, who have a ton of young talent. Super intrigued to see that. Okay, going from prospects to veterans, Mike Trout, who was out for the year, recurrence of his torn meniscus that he was rehabbing, thought he had that taken care of. He has been filling his time by ripping, doing breaks of trading cards. How wild is it that he, sitting there with his son on camera, pulled a signed version of his own rookie card in a break?
Super wild. I love it too. I love it. For people who like the hobby, you see a guy like Mike Trout also into it. And I think it's cool when you see baseball players also you know, like the hobby as well. I saw
They're just
one
like
about
us.
yeah, I saw one about Phillies Matt Strahm. I know we're changing the subject a little bit, but Matt Strahm, every time somebody hits a home run off him, he goes and gets one of their trading cards. So I think that's cool too. But I love the Mike Trout thing, getting his own card in a pack that was closed. So it wasn't fixed, fellas. It wasn't fixed.
Yeah. Okay. Big weekend of games coming up. Obviously, everybody's going to be back in action this weekend, although there's a couple teams off on Friday, which is always weird to me. Real quick, give me what you think are some of the most interesting matchups of the weekend. I've got one that's going to be really intriguing, but I want to give you a chance first here.
I have three. So
Okay.
you got
Okay.
one, I got three. I'm going to call it the NL West trifecta, even though there's four NL West teams and I'm going to talk about. But the Dodgers taking St. Louis. You got the Padres taking the Colorado Rockies, and you got the Arizona Diamondbacks going against the Tampa Bay Rays. Because, Lindsay, there is a chance, and I'm just going to say chance, that we have a new leader in the National League West by the time we come back and talk on Monday. Because the Dodgers are only 2 games up on the San Diego Padres and the Arizona Diamondbacks heading into the weekend. Absolutely insane. And the Dodgers, although they're going against my St. Louis Cardinals, who you might as well stick a fork in them. They're pretty much over. They might be able to steal a game or two away. And who knows, those Padres or Diamondbacks, they could cause a sweep. So we might have a new leader on Monday. We might have something to talk about.
Diamondbacks and Padres both 9-1 in their last 10 games. Padres on a 3-game win streak. Diamondbacks on a 6-game win streak despite the injuries. Dodgers 6-4. They've lost the last 2. Definitely interesting here. Everybody's also on the road, so that'll be interesting as far as when they get back home after this series, what happens. For me, it's got to be Cleveland at Milwaukee. 2 division leaders, both in the Central. We talked about Milwaukee earlier in the show. Feels like Milwaukee is the lockiest of locks to win that division and make the postseason. The Guardians, it feels like, have been in a little bit of trouble. They're 5-5 in their last 10 games, although they won 5 straight. So they've gotten hot in the last couple days, but now they got to go into Milwaukee, American Family Field. Yeah, American Family Field. And I have questions about it. Can they score enough runs to keep up with the Milwaukee Brewers? And that offense that we talked about, it's getting great contributions from their catchers. They're able to DH one of those guys every day since Yelich isn't in that role. Again, Jackson Churio being amazing. So curious to see what happens there. And I do think I'm still on the train that the Kansas City Royals can win this division. And I think the Guardians kind of getting knocked down a couple pegs. The Royals are 6 games back. Twins are 4 games back. I think the Royals, who were at Cincinnati this weekend, which should help their offense play up, I think you're in a situation where you could see a shakeup, not as significant as the West, but you could see a shakeup here.
I love it. Going to be some good baseball this weekend. So be sure you guys tune in, enjoy it, have a good time, and come on back on Monday. We'll have a lot to talk about for sure.
If you're watching on YouTube, do us a favor, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you know when we drop these new episodes every weekday morning. The goal is 10 a.m. Eastern. Doesn't always happen, but usually we have them out by 10 a.m. Eastern. If you're on audio, leave us a 5-star review on the podcast app of your choice. Really does mean a ton, and I'll actually go ahead and read some of the better ones on air as we get those coming in. So until Monday, enjoy the weekend of games, and this has been First Pitch.